He shoved her mid-inspection. The alien commander didn't last 5 minutes after. The station hung in the endless black of space, a massive structure of metal and lights, orbiting a planet rich with rare minerals. Humans had only recently begun traveling to this sector, and Elias knew that his presence was unusual. The Virelians were proud, disciplined, and unaccustomed to human crews inspecting their operations. The hatch hissed open, revealing a long corridor lined with polished metal panels and softly glowing lights. At the far end, an alien figure awaited him. Lyra Keith, the station commander, stood rigidly upright. Her scaled skin shimmered faintly under the corridor lights, shifting from deep green to blue with every movement. Her 4 eyes, each a different shade, studied Elias without blinking. She radiated authority, her posture so exact that even the humans standing nearby seemed to shrink under her gaze. "Captain Ward," she said, her voice a calm but sharp melody, "you are expected to comply with station protocols during your inspection. Any deviation will be noted." Elias bowed his head politely, though inside he felt a spark of defiance. "Understood, Commander Lyra Keith. I'm here to ensure safety and efficiency, nothing more." Lyra Keith tilted her head slightly, the equivalent of a Virelian smile, though it carried no warmth. "Humans are often unpredictable. We shall see if you meet the standards of this station." The corridor was narrow, yet every step felt loud under the alien commander's scrutiny. Elias walked slowly, observing the station's operation. Machines hummed, and automated drones floated quietly, repairing small faults and moving supplies. Crew members moved in synchronized patterns, their actions precise and controlled, almost like dancers performing a complicated ritual. Elias' human mind noted small irregularities, slightly worn panels, minor delays in drone programming, but nothing that would be catastrophic. Lyra Keith noticed his gaze lingering on the equipment. "Captain, do you find fault with our systems already?" she asked, her voice calm but carrying an unspoken warning. Elias straightened. "Not fault, Commander. I see room for improvement. Safety is always a priority. Even the smallest changes can prevent problems later." Her 4 eyes narrowed. Improvement suggestions from a human are unusual. The tension in the corridor was tangible. Crew members around them kept their heads low, unsure how to react to this encounter. On the Virelian station, no outsider had ever spoken so directly to a commander during an inspection. It was considered an act of audacity or foolishness. Elias moved closer to a control panel and tapped it lightly, observing the responses of the automated systems. "This console is efficient, but there's a slight delay in the coolant regulation here. It may not cause immediate issues, but over time it could affect production." Lyra Keith stepped beside him, her presence immense. "That is negligible. Human caution is excessive. Our systems function within acceptable parameters." Elias turned to face her fully, maintaining eye contact as much as possible. "Commander, even small errors can grow if unchecked. Humans take such details seriously because lives depend on them." The commander's tail flicked slightly, a sign of irritation. "You presume to teach me caution?" Elias took a breath. He had been trained to handle delicate situations like this, but Lyra Keith's presence was overwhelming. He decided to try something unorthodox. "Not to teach, but to collaborate," he said, keeping his tone calm. He reached toward a nearby lever on the panel to demonstrate a minor adjustment to the coolant regulation. Lyra Keith stepped back sharply, her eyes widening for the first time. "Do not touch." Before she could finish, Elias gently guided her hand aside and adjusted the lever. The system responded immediately, and a light on the console turned from yellow to green, signaling optimal performance. For a heartbeat, the corridor was silent. Crew members froze mid-step. The Virelian commander, usually unshakable, took a step back. You touched me," she said, her voice a mixture of surprise and disbelief. Elias did not flinch. "I moved your hand to prevent interference, Commander, that's all." Lyra Keith's 4 eyes regarded him carefully. Something shifted in her expression, respect, confusion, perhaps a mixture of both. She had never encountered a human who acted with both boldness and tact. "Humans are unpredictable," she murmured, almost to herself. Elias nodded. "We adapt quickly to unexpected situations. That is our strength." The rest of the inspection continued under an unusual atmosphere. Crew members whispered to each other, glancing between Elias and their commander. Normally, Lyra Keith's authority was absolute. Now there was hesitation. a subtle uncertainty that no Violian commander had ever shown. As they walked through the station, Elias pointed out small inefficiencies, communication protocols between drones, storage of critical resources, minor alignment issues in the solar arrays. Each time, he demonstrated solutions with calm reasoning, showing how minor adjustments could prevent future problems. Lyra Kaith followed, observing silently. She did not interrupt anymore, but her eyes were sharp, noting every word and action. Elias could sense her pride struggling against the truth of his suggestions. Unlike humans, who often embraced learning from others, Violians relied heavily on authority and strict hierarchy. A human challenging a commander's methods was unheard of. At one point, they entered the engineering bay. Massive machines hummed in rhythm, their lights casting long shadows across the polished floor. Elias noticed a small misalignment in a pressure regulator, a flaw that could reduce efficiency over time. "See here," he said, kneeling and pointing to the gauge. "The calibration is slightly off. Correcting it would improve output by 2%. It's minor, but every little improvement counts." Lyra Kaith bent down, her gaze sharp. She reached out instinctively to correct it herself. Elias, sensing her movement might disturb the machinery, gently placed his hand on hers to steady it. The touch was firm but non-threatening, a simple guidance to ensure precision. Her eyes widened again, this time with something new: curiosity. "You interfere with a commander's work?" she asked, her tone neither angry nor amused. "Only to achieve the best result," Elias replied simply. The alien commander's tail twitched, a sign of inner conflict. For centuries, she had been trained to maintain control through authority and intimidation. A human had just demonstrated that boldness combined with reasoning could achieve the same, if not better, results. They moved on to the station's control room, a large chamber with holographic displays showing the orbiting planet below. Elias noted discrepancies in resource tracking, minor delays in drone deployment, and inefficiencies in crew rotation schedules. Each observation was presented calmly, logically, and without criticism. Lyra Kaith listened silently, no longer attempting to assert her dominance through sharp words or intimidation. Crew members around them began to murmur, exchanging surprised glances. Elias' human approach was teaching them something new. Collaboration could be stronger than fear. By the time the inspection reached the observation deck, the sun of the distant planet reflected off the station's metal surface, casting golden streaks across the room. Elias stood looking out at the world below, feeling a sense of purpose. Humans had always been considered weaker in direct confrontations, but here, the power of thought, adaptability, and courage mattered more. Lyra Kaith finally spoke, her voice quiet, almost thoughtful. "You are unlike any human I have encountered, Captain Ward." Elias smiled faintly. "We have our strengths, Commander. We adapt, we learn, and sometimes we act when others hesitate." The moment was subtle but significant. In less than an hour, Elias had challenged centuries of Violian tradition, not with violence, but with reasoning, skill, and confidence. The commander's authority, once absolute, now showed cracks, and the station's crew quietly recognized it. Elias knew this was only the beginning. The rest of the inspection would test both his patience and ingenuity. But he also knew one truth that humans carried across the galaxy: courage and cleverness could achieve more than force ever could. And for the first time, a Violian commander considered that perhaps humans were a species to be respected, not feared. The station was quieter than usual the next morning. Even the humming machines seemed to sense a change in the atmosphere. Captain Elias Ward moved through the corridors with careful steps, noting how differently the crew treated him now. Where yesterday they had stared from the corners of their eyes, today they approached with cautious curiosity. Whispers filled the air, soft and careful, about the human who had dared to correct their commander, and done so without aggression. Lyra Kaith walked beside him, her expression unreadable. She no longer carried the same rigid authority that had defined her presence before. Instead, she seemed alert, cautious, and perhaps most unnervingly for her, thoughtful. The humans aboard the station were different from her Violian officers. They did not respond to intimidation or hierarchy in the same way. And yesterday, one human had shown her that authority alone was not always enough. Elias' first stop that morning was the drone maintenance bay. The small, floating maintenance drones moved in synchronized patterns, performing routine repairs and checks. Elias observed closely, noticing inefficiencies in the drone's paths that were slowing their work by mere seconds. Seconds might seem insignificant, but over hours, those seconds added up. "Commander," Elias began, "the drones are following fixed routines. If we adjust their paths slightly, they will complete repairs faster and reduce overlap. It may seem small, but efficiency improves with every step we save." Lyracath bent her head, her 4 eyes studying the drones with precision. "I see." "And you think human observation can outperform Virelian programming?" Elias smiled. "Not outperform, Commander. Optimize. Small improvements make a difference over time." For a moment, Lyracath said nothing. Then she nodded slowly. "Show me your method." Elias adjusted the drone routes through a tablet interface. He carefully demonstrated how each drone could move without colliding or duplicating work, and how the same tasks could be completed in a shorter time. Within minutes, the drone's schedules were more efficient, and a display screen confirmed the improvement. The officers who had been observing from the sidelines whispered among themselves. For centuries, their work had relied on strict routines and obedience. To see a human calmly suggest adjustments, and have those adjustments work immediately, was remarkable. Some smiled quietly, exchanging nods of approval. Others remained silent, unsure how to reconcile their loyalty to the commander with the effectiveness of the human. Lyracath's tail flicked nervously. The small movement betrayed her inner conflict. She had never seen her crew react positively to a human, and certainly not to someone who had challenged her authority without confrontation. She found herself questioning, for the first time, whether her rigid approach was the only way. Elias moved to the observation deck next. The planet below shimmered with streaks of green and brown, oceans reflecting light from the distant sun. The planet was rich, and the station's purpose was to monitor and manage resources efficiently. He turned to Lyracath. "Commander, may I suggest a change in resource allocation?" Elias asked. "Currently, the energy distribution prioritizes certain sectors based on tradition. But if we shift some energy to the outer arrays, production could increase by 4% without impacting core operations." Lyracath blinked one pair of eyes. "You propose a shift in energy distribution? A human suggests a change to station-wide systems." "Yes, Commander," Elias replied calmly. "The system is stable, the adjustment is calculated, it is not risky, it is only more efficient." She studied him silently. There was no trace of anger in her expression, only contemplation. Slowly, she tapped a command on the console. The displays shifted to show projected outputs with the new allocation. As predicted, production increased slightly, and the outer arrays performed better. The crew around them murmured again, and some officers even whispered in approval. It was subtle, but Elias noticed. The human approach, the combination of observation, reasoning, and respectful demonstration, was gaining trust where authority alone had once ruled. Lyracath's eyes narrowed slightly. She realized that yesterday's shove during the inspection, though minor and controlled, had been a tipping point. It had shown the crew and herself that humans did not fear confrontation. That small act had challenged the station's culture of absolute control. "Captain Ward," she said finally, her tone careful, "your methods are unusual. You rely on collaboration rather than command. You expect others to think for themselves." Elias nodded. "Humans value cooperation, Commander. We believe that everyone can contribute to a solution. Leadership is not about fear. It is about guidance and clarity." She did not respond immediately. Her gaze drifted to the crew, some of whom were adjusting schedules, reviewing equipment logs, or recalculating projections based on Elias' observations. Slowly, she realized that her crew had started to rely on his guidance, even if they would never admit it openly. The day passed with similar interactions. Elias suggested adjustments to resource allocation, equipment maintenance, and communication protocols. Each time, the improvements were subtle but measurable, and the crew gradually adapted. Lyracath observed, alternating between curiosity and quiet concern. By the end of the day, she found herself unsure of how to reassert her authority without appearing unreasonable. That evening, the station's main communication hall was filled with officers reporting their daily logs. Elias had been invited to attend, not as a guest, but as a participant. Virelian custom required that only the commander review these reports, yet now the human's presence was accepted. An officer reported a minor delay in drone deployment. Elias raised a question about the scheduling software, and within moments, the officer implemented a small adjustment that eliminated the delay. The other officers exchanged surprised looks. Lyra Keith noticed the subtle shift in tone and behavior among her team. They were starting to respect the human's input more than her own orders. "Interesting," she murmured to herself. Her pride, long a cornerstone of her authority, was quietly being challenged. Yet she could not deny the results. The station's efficiency had improved in less than a day under the human's guidance. Later, in private, she approached Elias in the observation deck. The planet below shimmered as the station rotated in orbit. "Captain," she said quietly, "your methods are different. I have never seen such effectiveness without enforcement of fear or strict orders. How do you accomplish this?" Elias smiled. "Commander, humans adapt. We rely on reasoning, on observation, on collaboration. We trust that people want to do the right thing, and we guide them to achieve it." Lyra Keith's eyes flicked to the planet below, then back to him. "It is remarkable, yet it unsettles me. My crew respects strength and command. You have shifted that respect in one day." Elias shrugged gently. "Sometimes strength is shown through calm action and guidance, not through intimidation. You have excellent systems, Commander. I only show a few ways to make them better." For a long moment, she remained silent. Then she nodded slightly, her expression unreadable. "Perhaps there is value in your methods, but do not think this changes everything. Violians rely on structure and discipline for a reason." "I understand," Elias replied, "and I respect that. I do not aim to replace your authority, I only aim to work with it." The two stood in silence, the planet's glow reflecting off the windows. Outside, the crew moved efficiently, quietly adapting some of the changes Elias had suggested. Subtle but undeniable. The balance of authority was shifting. By the time the station's lights dimmed for the night cycle, Lyra Keith could not deny a truth she had never faced before. Humans were not merely physical beings to be controlled. Their intelligence, adaptability, and calm courage could challenge centuries of tradition in ways she had never imagined. Elias retired to his quarters with a quiet satisfaction. The inspection had begun with tension, but it had grown into collaboration. For the first time, a human had not only survived, but influenced the inner workings of a Violian station without force or threat. And somewhere deep within Lyra Keith, a new thought had taken root. Perhaps strength was not always shown through control. Perhaps humans, in their boldness and cleverness, had lessons to teach, even to a commander who had never been questioned before. The next day would bring more challenges, and Elias knew that. But for now, the seed of respect had been planted, and the station's atmosphere had shifted in subtle, meaningful ways. Humans, he thought, were capable of more than the Violians, or perhaps even they themselves, had ever imagined. The next morning, the station hummed with a strange energy. Crew members moved with purpose, but there was a new undercurrent in the air, a sense of curiosity and quiet excitement. Elias Ward walked through the corridors with measured steps, noting the subtle glances of the crew. They no longer looked at him with mere surprise. Now there was a hint of admiration, and even the officers who had been skeptical yesterday had begun to listen carefully to his suggestions. Lyra Keith observed him from the observation deck, standing tall yet slightly tense. Her posture remained regal, but there was an unmistakable shift in her demeanor. For the first time, she realized that the human's influence could not be ignored. The commander who had once been unchallenged now faced a situation that she had never experienced. Her authority was being questioned, not through force, but through competence. "Captain Ward," she said, her voice calm yet carrying a subtle firmness, "your approach is effective." But Violians do not accept guidance lightly. Efficiency alone does not prove leadership. You may have improved the systems, but can you demonstrate your methods under pressure? Elias tilted his head slightly, curious. "Under pressure? How do you mean, Commander?" Lyra Keith walked toward the central console and tapped a series of controls. Holographic displays lit up around the room, showing the station's various sectors. The resource matrix in the lower bays has experienced irregular outputs. Normally, a commander would resolve this using standard procedures. I challenge you to correct it using only human reasoning and observation. You may not use preset commands or automated shortcuts. Elias studied the displays carefully. The irregularities were subtle but had the potential to slow production if ignored. He noted patterns in the energy flow, observed the minor misalignments in resource distribution, and began calculating a solution in his mind. "I accept," he said. "Show me the specifics of the issue, and I will address it." Lyracaith's 4 eyes watched him closely. Around the room, officers and crew gathered, eager to see how a human would respond. The challenge was more than technical, it was cultural. No outsider had ever attempted to solve a problem in front of the station while under scrutiny. Humans were expected to follow orders or observe quietly. Yet here he was, calm and confident, ready to demonstrate human ingenuity. Elias walked to the lower bay sector, accompanied by Lyracaith. He examined the pipelines, the energy conduits, and the automated drones. Nothing appeared broken, yet subtle fluctuations in output confirmed the problem. The energy was not reaching the outer modules efficiently, and minor delays were affecting overall productivity. "Commander, these fluctuations are caused by misaligned calibration in the conduit regulators," Elias explained. "The system itself is sound, but the distribution needs a small adjustment to restore balance. The solution does not require force. It requires observation, careful calculation, and proper guidance of the systems." Lyracaith raised an eyebrow. "And you are confident you can resolve this faster than my standard protocol?" Elias nodded. "I believe so." He approached the nearest regulator and began recalculating settings, taking into account energy input, output demands, and distribution efficiency. He guided the crew to make adjustments, explaining each step logically and clearly. Unlike the Virelians, who might have followed a strict procedural order, Elias adapted on the spot, responding to real-time changes and ensuring that the system remained stable throughout the process. Within minutes, the irregularities corrected themselves. Energy flowed evenly to all sectors, output stabilized, and efficiency increased by a noticeable margin. The crew exchanged quiet whispers of admiration, and even Lyracaith could not deny the result. "You corrected it," she said slowly. "Without the usual protocols, without preset commands, and without forcing the crew. How did you manage this?" Elias glanced at her calmly. "Observation and understanding, Commander. Humans study the systems, anticipate outcomes, and adapt as needed. We do not rely on rigidity alone. Flexibility and reasoning are our tools." The commander's tail twitched slightly, betraying her inner tension. She had been trained to handle emergencies through authority and discipline. Yet here, a human had resolved a complex problem efficiently without any use of control or intimidation. She realized that the crew's respect for him was growing, not out of fear, but out of admiration. As they returned to the central deck, Elias noticed officers making notes of his methods. The subtle shift in their behavior was undeniable. They were beginning to think critically, to question rigid routines, and to apply reasoning in ways they had not before. Lyracaith followed silently, her pride both challenged and intrigued. Later, in a private conference room, the commander spoke again. "Captain Ward, your methods are effective, but Virelians value logic, structure, and predictability. Humans are known for impulsiveness. How can I trust that your approach will succeed consistently?" Elias smiled. "Commander, human thinking combines careful observation with adaptability. Impulsiveness exists, but it is guided by understanding and foresight. I rely on logic first, then adjust as necessary." "It is a balance, not chaos." Lyracaith regarded him for a long moment. "Interesting. Perhaps this is why humans have survived in situations that even my species would find challenging." The next challenge arose naturally, as the station's communication network experienced minor delays. Normally, Lyracaith would have followed strict protocols, checking each system manually and enforcing procedures. Instead, Elias observed patterns in the network traffic and suggested adjustments to routing priorities. Within minutes, communication speed improved, and the delay disappeared entirely. Officers and crew were amazed. They had witnessed a human solve multiple issues in a single day, using reasoning, observation, and calm guidance. No one had ever challenged the station's routines so efficiently, and yet nothing had been broken, forced, or rushed. Lyracaith's expression was carefully neutral, but inside she was conflicted. Her authority relied on respect earned through rank, tradition, and sometimes fear. But here was a human demonstrating leadership without any of those tools. Authority, she realized, could be earned through competence, intelligence, and the ability to inspire trust. By evening, the station's halls buzzed with quiet discussions about human methods. Crew members who had once hesitated to speak now shared ideas, inspired by Elias' approach. The rigid hierarchy was subtly shifting, and Lyra Keith noticed that she no longer commanded unquestioned obedience. She sought Elias privately on the observation deck. The planet below glowed softly, its oceans and forests visible even from orbit. "Captain Ward," she said, "your success today is undeniable. You have gained the crew's attention and respect, but influence is different from leadership. How do you manage both without enforcing fear or strict rules?" Elias looked out at the planet, considering his words. "Leadership is guiding, not controlling. Humans lead by example, showing what is possible and allowing others to follow willingly. Influence comes naturally when people see results and feel empowered. Fear is unnecessary when trust exists." Lyra Keith's eyes reflected both admiration and unease. She had spent her life relying on fear, protocol, and authority. Now she saw that another approach, calm, logical, and adaptable, could achieve more. Her pride resisted, but deep down she recognized its truth. Over the following days, Elias continued to demonstrate human ingenuity. He suggested optimizations for energy, resource distribution, drone management, and communication. Each improvement was small, subtle, and fully reversible, yet cumulative results were remarkable. Efficiency increased, errors decreased, and the crew became more engaged, thinking critically instead of following blindly. The Virelian officers began approaching him privately, asking questions about his methods. Some were curious, others cautious, but all were intrigued. Lyra Keith observed, realizing that her influence had waned, at least slightly, while human influence had grown. One evening, she invited Elias to a private meeting. "Captain Ward, your methods are challenging. You respect the crew, yet they respect you more than me in some ways." "This is new, unsettling, but effective," Elias nodded. "I do not aim to undermine you, Commander. My goal is collaboration. The station functions best when everyone contributes ideas and solutions rather than following orders blindly." Lyra Keith was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Perhaps there is more to your species than I understood. Humans survive, adapt, and succeed in ways even I did not expect. You have taught lessons without force, without intimidation. That is remarkable." Elias smiled faintly. "It is what humans do best. We find solutions, adapt to challenges, and inspire others to do the same. Respect is earned through competence, not fear." The commander nodded slowly, the realization sinking in. Her authority was no longer absolute, but it could coexist with human influence if she embraced the lesson. She understood that strength was not only shown through rank, it could also be shown through intelligence, courage, and calm action. As night fell over the planet below, the station settled into a new rhythm. Crew members moved with a quiet confidence, officers whispered strategies among themselves, and even Lyra Keith reflected on the human who had transformed their approach to leadership. Elias retired to his quarters, satisfied but aware of the challenges ahead. The station had changed in just a few days, and the shift in influence was only beginning. Humans, he thought, could teach even the most disciplined species that calm reasoning and courage were more powerful than intimidation. And somewhere in her observation deck, Lyra Keith considered that perhaps the human's way was not a threat, but an opportunity for the station, the crew, and even for her own understanding of leadership. The station had changed. In the corridors, the hum of machinery was accompanied by quiet discussions among the crew. Officers who had once moved with rigid discipline now paused to exchange ideas. Subtle adjustments to workflow, drone routes, and resource distribution had improved efficiency, and crew members had noticed. What surprised them more was how calmly and confidently these changes had been introduced by a human. Lyra Keith moved through the station's halls, observing the quiet transformation. The shift was subtle but undeniable. Crew members now approached her less frequently for guidance and more often sought her counsel in combination with their own reasoning. They were beginning to think independently, inspired by Elias Ward's approach. She felt a tension she had never known before, a mixture of pride, concern, and curiosity. Her authority was no longer absolute. And though she would never admit it, she had begun to respect the human captain in ways that made her question her own methods. The day began with a council meeting. The highest-ranking officers assembled in the central chamber, a large room with walls of transparent material that offered a clear view of the planet below. Lyra Keith presided as usual, but the energy in the room had shifted. Where fear and discipline had once ensured silence, today there was quiet confidence and the willingness to speak. "Commander," one officer began cautiously, "the drone maintenance schedule has been adjusted according to Captain Ward's recommendations. The result is an improvement in repair efficiency by over 3%. Lyra Keith's eyes narrowed slightly, her tail flicking with subtle agitation. "Yes, I am aware," she replied. "The humans' methods are unconventional, but the outcome is acceptable. Continue monitoring." Another officer spoke. "Resource distribution for the outer arrays has also been optimized. We observed the predicted increase in production. Captain Ward's calculations were accurate." Lyra Keith felt her usual certainty waver. The crew's respect for Elias was growing, and with each acknowledgement, her traditional authority seemed to slip. She maintained a calm exterior, but inside, she realized she was navigating unfamiliar territory. After the council, Elias approached her quietly in the observation deck. The planet below shimmered under the distant sun, its forests and oceans reflecting light across the station's surface. "Commander," he said, "the crew is adapting well. They have learned to trust their observations and reasoning. Your leadership is still respected, but they now see collaboration as equally effective." Lyra Keith regarded him silently, her 4 eyes reflecting a mixture of thought and emotion. "You have influenced the crew without force, without threat, and without demanding obedience. This is new, unsettling perhaps, but effective." Elias nodded. "That is how humans lead, Commander. We guide and inspire. Fear is unnecessary when trust exists." The commander's tail twitched thoughtfully. "You have challenged centuries of tradition in a single week. Your methods are remarkable, but do not mistake this for weakness. I will maintain command, though I see now that authority is not absolute." Over the next few days, subtle incidents reinforced the change. Crew members approached Elias with suggestions and corrections that might have previously been ignored. They sought his input not because he was their superior, but because his insight was valued. Officers who had once relied on rigid routines began to experiment with small adjustments, testing Elias' approach. One morning, the station experienced a minor energy fluctuation in the auxiliary power grid. Normally, Lyra Keith would have issued commands, forcing crew members to follow strict protocols. Instead, Elias observed the issue, calculated the optimal adjustment, and guided the team step by step. Within minutes, the fluctuation stabilized. Crew members who had previously hesitated to speak now offered observations, proposing further refinements. Lyra Keith watched silently, acknowledging the human's ability to resolve the problem without commanding anyone. She realized that her traditional methods, though effective in theory, were no longer the only path to success. Later, in a private conference room, the commander addressed Elias directly. "Captain Ward, your influence grows daily. Crew members speak to you without hesitation, yet they hesitate with me. How do you maintain respect while being approachable?" Elias smiled calmly. "Respect is earned through competence, clarity, and trust, Commander. I do not demand it. I demonstrate it. People follow willingly when they see results and feel included." Lyra Keith considered his words carefully. "I see. This is different from Virelian leadership. We rely on command and discipline, not collaboration, yet your approach works, efficiently, reliably." And the crew responds positively. "Yes," Elias replied. "Humans lead by example. We inspire rather than compel. It builds loyalty and encourages critical thinking." The commander remained silent, observing the crew outside the window. They were adjusting schedules, testing drone routes, and discussing resource allocation without waiting for orders. Her authority, though intact, was no longer the sole guiding force. For the first time, she understood that leadership could exist alongside influence, and that collaboration could be stronger than hierarchy. The station's shift in dynamics became more apparent during the next major challenge. A data discrepancy appeared in the central command system, affecting projections for resource output. Normally, Lyra Keith would have issued precise orders to correct the problem, expecting the crew to comply. Elias, however, approached it differently. He gathered the relevant officers and reviewed the data with them, asking questions and listening to their observations. Together, they identified a minor programming error that had caused the discrepancy. Elias guided them through a solution, explaining each adjustment logically. Within an hour, the projections were accurate and the system stabilized. The crew's confidence in their own reasoning grew. They had not simply followed orders. They had solved the problem with Elias' guidance, learning from the process. Lyracath observed quietly, noting how effectively collaboration achieved results where strict command might have been slower or less precise. That evening, Elias and Lyracath met privately on the observation deck. The planet below glowed softly, and the station's lights reflected across the metallic walls. "Captain Ward," she said, "your influence has changed the crew's behavior. They question, observe, and suggest. My authority is no longer absolute, yet I cannot deny the improvement in efficiency and morale." Elias nodded. "Commander, authority is not the only way to lead. Humans inspire others through reasoning, example, and trust. Fear is unnecessary when people understand the value of their contributions." Lyracath's 4 eyes reflected a mixture of pride, curiosity, and humility. "It is remarkable. I have spent decades commanding this station, yet you have achieved in days what I could not with authority alone." "I only guided," Elias replied. "The crew's success is theirs, not mine. I only helped them see their own capabilities." The commander remained silent for a long moment, considering the implications. She realized that her traditional methods, while effective in maintaining control, had limited the crew's potential. Elias had not only improved the station's efficiency, but had also unlocked creativity and initiative among the crew. The next morning, the station was alive with energy. Crew members moved confidently, making small adjustments and proposing improvements. Officers discussed ideas openly, no longer constrained by strict protocols. Even Lyracath found herself consulting Elias on decisions, valuing his insight while maintaining her role as commander. By midday, it was clear that the station had entered a new era. Leadership was no longer defined solely by rank and authority. Collaboration, observation, and reasoning were recognized as equally powerful tools. Elias' presence had shown that humans could teach even disciplined species new ways to approach problems. As the day ended, Lyracath approached Elias on the observation deck once more. "Captain Ward, your methods have challenged everything I thought I knew about leadership. Authority alone is not enough. Influence, guidance, and trust are equally, perhaps more effective." Elias smiled. "That is what humans have learned over millennia, Commander. We adapt, observe, and guide. Strength is shown through competence, courage, and reasoning, not fear or control." The commander nodded slowly, a sense of respect and understanding in her expression. She had faced a human who did not follow her rules blindly, yet achieved results beyond expectation. Her pride was intact, but her perspective had shifted. Outside, the station rotated gracefully in orbit, the planet below reflecting sunlight across its surface. Crew members moved with confidence and purpose, guided by both tradition and innovation. The Virelian commander and the human captain stood together, observing a station transformed not through force, but through the quiet power of reasoning and collaboration. And in that moment, Lyracath understood something profound. Leadership was not about maintaining control at all costs. It was about inspiring others to realize their potential. And sometimes, humans had a way of teaching that lesson faster, calmer, and more effectively than any other species she had ever encountered. The station hummed with quiet efficiency as the sun of the distant planet rose. Over the horizon, light reflected across the observation windows, painting streaks of gold and green onto the polished floors. Captain Elias Ward moved through the corridors with a calm confidence, noting the subtle but profound change in the atmosphere. Where once the crew had hesitated at every decision, now they moved with purpose. Officers consulted one another, adjusting routines and procedures without waiting for strict orders. Drones worked efficiently, resource allocation had become more precise, and minor issues were corrected before they could affect operations. The station was alive, not just with machinery, but with the energy of people who felt empowered to think, act, and collaborate. Lyracath observed him from the observation deck. Her posture was still regal, her eyes sharp, but her expression had softened. Over the past week, she had watched the human captain inspire her crew not through fear or rigid commands, but through guidance, reasoning, and calm leadership. And though it had unsettled her pride, she could not deny the results. The station was better because of him. Captain Ward, she said, stepping beside him, the station is transformed. Efficiency has improved, morale is higher, and the crew takes initiative in ways I did not expect. You have done more than improve operations. You have changed the culture. Elias nodded. I only guided them, Commander. The credit belongs to the crew. Humans lead by example, not by command. We show what is possible and let others follow willingly. Lyra Keith studied him quietly, considering his words. It is remarkable. I had always believed that authority and discipline alone ensured success. Yet your methods achieve even greater results. Perhaps I have much to learn. You already lead well, Commander, Elias said. Your knowledge, experience, and dedication are invaluable. I only show alternative approaches that complement your skills. For the first time, Lyra Keith smiled, faint but genuine. Perhaps there is a place for collaboration alongside authority. Perhaps strength is not only measured in control, but also in understanding and adaptability. Over the following days, Elias continued to work with the crew, not as a commander but as a consultant and guide. He suggested adjustments to scheduling, resource allocation, and maintenance procedures. He encouraged officers to think critically, make observations, and propose solutions. Gradually, the crew grew more confident, more creative, and more engaged. Lyra Keith noticed subtle changes in herself as well. She began seeking Elias' advice on complex situations, not because she doubted her own judgment, but because she recognized the value of perspective. She had spent decades relying on authority to maintain control, yet now she understood that leadership could coexist with collaboration. Influence and respect could be as powerful as rank. One afternoon, an unexpected challenge arose. A meteor shower had passed near the station, and while there was no danger, minor debris had caused temporary glitches in the outer sensor arrays. Normally, Lyra Keith would have issued strict commands for repairs. This time, she allowed Elias to coordinate the effort. He gathered a small team of officers and technicians, explaining the issue and asking for their observations. They examined the arrays together, identifying minor misalignments and recalibrating sensors. Elias guided them logically, encouraging them to suggest improvements. Within an hour, the arrays were fully operational, and the data streams were accurate once more. The crew's confidence soared. They realized that problems could be solved through careful observation, reasoning, and teamwork, not just following orders. And Lyra Keith, observing from the control room, felt a quiet satisfaction. Authority had not been lost. It had evolved into something greater, something more effective. Later, in a private discussion, she addressed Elias. Captain Ward, your influence has grown to the point that crew members now seek your guidance before mine. How do you maintain respect without undermining my authority? Elias smiled gently. Respect is earned through competence, clarity, and trust, Commander. I do not compete with authority, I complement it. The crew respects you because they see your skill and experience. They also respect me because they see the value in guidance and collaboration. Authority and influence can coexist when used wisely. Lyra Keith considered his words carefully. It is different from anything I have known, yet it works. The station functions better than ever. Perhaps this is a lesson I must remember. Leadership is not one-dimensional. Strength is shown not only through command, but through the ability to inspire and guide. Elias nodded. Exactly. Humans have learned this over centuries. We adapt, observe, and guide. Courage and intelligence are more powerful than fear. The same principle applies here. As the days passed, the station thrived under this new balance. Officers proposed improvements in areas that had previously been rigidly controlled. Crew members experimented with better resource storage, more efficient drone routes, and faster communication protocols. And while Lyra Keith remained the commander, her role had shifted subtly. She was no longer just an enforcer of rules. She had become a leader who could listen, learn, and incorporate new ideas without feeling threatened. The human captain continued to guide, always respectful, always logical, and always encouraging. The crew responded positively, inspired by his calm confidence and practical insight. They had learned to think critically, solve problems efficiently, and collaborate effectively, skills that would serve them long after Elias departed. One evening, as the station rotated in orbit and the planet below glimmered in the sunlight, Lyra Keith approached Elias on the observation deck. "Captain Ward," she said softly, You have changed this station, this crew, and perhaps even me. Authority alone cannot achieve what you have done. Influence, guidance, and trust are just as powerful. Elias looked out at the planet, feeling the quiet satisfaction of a mission accomplished. That is the strength of humans, Commander. We adapt, we guide, and we inspire. The crew's success is their own. I only help them see their potential. Lyra Keith nodded, her expression reflecting both pride and humility. You have shown me that leadership is not a matter of rank alone. It is about understanding, collaboration, and the ability to inspire confidence. I will not forget this lesson. Outside, the station thrived in its new rhythm. Crew members moved confidently. Drones worked efficiently, and minor adjustments were made without instruction because the team understood their purpose and had the tools to act. Lyra Keith stood beside Elias, observing a station that had become a model of cooperation and efficiency. This is remarkable, she said. The crew respects both authority and guidance. Efficiency has increased, morale is higher, and the station functions better than ever. Perhaps humans are more than I imagined. Elias smiled. Humans have always adapted, Commander. We find solutions, learn quickly, and inspire others to do the same. Respect and leadership are earned, not demanded. Lyra Keith considered his words. For centuries, she had believed that control and fear were essential to leadership. Now she understood that collaboration and reasoning could achieve far more. The station was proof of this truth. As the planet below rotated slowly, casting long shadows across the station, Elias turned to the commander. This station will continue to thrive because of you and your crew. My guidance is temporary, but the lessons remain. You have the skill, the knowledge, and now the understanding to lead in a new way. Lyra Keith's eyes softened. And you, Captain Ward, have taught me that strength is not only in command, but in understanding, guiding, and inspiring others. I will carry this lesson forward, as will the crew. For the first time, both human and Virelian stood in quiet harmony, observing a station transformed. Authority had not been lost, it had evolved. Leadership had not been weakened, it had grown stronger. And the crew, inspired by calm courage, reasoning, and collaboration, moved confidently into a future where both humans and Virelians could work together, achieving more than either species could alone. The station hummed with life, a symbol of cooperation, innovation, and mutual respect. And Captain Elias Ward, the human who had dared to challenge tradition not with force but with insight, had shown that courage, intelligence, and calm reasoning could leave a legacy far greater than authority alone. Outside, the planet shimmered in the sunlight, a reminder that in a vast universe, humans could inspire, guide, and teach even the most disciplined alien societies the power of collaboration, ingenuity, and trust. And for the first time, Lyra Keith felt something she had never known in all her years of command. The quiet pride of leading alongside a human who had not only challenged her, but had helped her see a better way forward.